Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on the time you are watching this video, this lecture. Today, we are going to handle a subject that I started in the last lecture, the subject of governance, corruption, and integrity. And in my handling of this subject, we are not confining it to only business. We are talking about governance, corruption, and integrity as they apply to various sectors in the society, to business sectors, to government, to all the other institutions and all the other domains of life, activities, and various practices in the society. The importance of this subject is so great because you cannot achieve progress and development, you cannot advance, you cannot achieve competitive advantage, you cannot alleviate poverty, you cannot raise the standard of living for all segments of the society if you have a system characterized by poor or bad governance, or if you have corruption penetrating the institutions and the sectors and the various domains of activities in the society. Last time I focused on governance, and just to remind you, governance refers to the framework by which a particular entity or domain is governed, meaning how authority and accountability are practiced in that entity or that domain. Our focus today is an extension of the theme of governance, talking about or focusing about corruption and integrity. And let me first indicate that corruption may seem to be the opposite of integrity. However, I'm going to clarify more what each concept means. Corruption exists when we see bribes, when you see nepotism, cronyism, when we see favoritism, when we see people trading in office, utilizing their authority to make gains, to make wealth, to receive bribes. It takes various forms, but the overall meaning, and this is my definition, by the way, it's not the definition that you may find in the literature. Corruption is using or exploiting, utilizing an institutional position or authority held by a person or a group to achieve or realize private gains or interests for that person or these groups. So a person in a position of authority, a manager, a director, or even a regular employee who has power or authority, who can make decisions, who can allocate resources, who can receive revenues, who can apply certain rules. If he or she uses that authority, uses that power, uses the decision-making power that his or her position gives to him or her to make private, personal gains. Gains for himself or gains for people he favors. Against the rules, against the criteria, against the standards, against the policies of that institution. Corruption exists when people do not act according to the trust put in them, according to the confidence put in them. They violate and they behave, they practice in a way contrary to the trust or the confidence put in them. This is corruption. This is the overall definition, in my view, of corruption. We have to realize here that the position here is an institutional position, a position in an organization, in a structure, in an entity, and that position gives power, decision-making, discretion or power, and the person holding the position uses or utilizes the position to make private or personal gains, to realize interest against what was stated or what is supposed to happen from him in the position that he holds. Integrity. What is integrity? It is using an institutional position. The definition is appearing or may appear to be the opposite of corruption. Using an institutional position or authority to realize organizational, institutional, or public interest. Using the power given to the person holding the position in the organization, in the institution, to the benefit of that institution, or for public to realize public gains or public interests. Corruption and integrity are opposite of each other. Integrity means honesty, means transparency, meaning, devotion, but it means more than the opposite of corruption, because it involves positive and proactive practices to realize, good things for the organization, to realize organization goals, to realize organizational strategy or interests. Both corruption and integrity refer to how authority or power is utilized to serve what interests. In the case of corruption, it is to serve the interest of the person or his cronies, his or her, cronies. Cronies means maybe his relatives, his friends, people with whom he has exchange. In the case of integrity, the authority is utilized to serve good ends, to realize benefits, to realize the goals of the organization, to realize the trust put in the person for the use of that authority. Okay, what is the relationship between governance, corruption, and integrity? The existence of corruption means you have poor or bad governance. You have governance system that is characterized by loopholes, gaps, not adhering to the principles or the elements that I discussed and I elaborated on in the last lecture of good governance. If you remember, let me just go through quickly the elements and the principles of good governance. In the case of corruption, there will be no integrity, very weak integrity. There will be lack of transparency. Practices, decisions, actions are made in a secretive way, not openly. Information about the decisions would not be available to other people in the organization or outside the organization. You would have weak accountability. People in the authority positions are not asked about what they do. This is the meaning of lack of accountability. Equity and fairness would not be there. Efficiency and economy are not realized. Objectivity, professionalism, neutrality are not there. When people use the authority to make private gains, of course they would not be acting objectively. They would not base their activities, their decisions on neutral or objective criteria. Inclusiveness would not be there because you would favor, for example, certain groups of people who are affected by the decisions. There is no participation. There is no collective action. The rule of law is violated. You don't abide by the regulations and the rule of law. And there is no equal opportunity because you are favoring yourself or you are favoring a particular group with whom you have certain relationships that benefit you and that provide gains for you. These are the elements of good governance. In the case of corruption, gaps would exist in these that allow corruption to take place. So corruption, more or less, is a result of institutional or organizational weaknesses. Of course, part of it relates to the individuals, their value system, their honesty, their integrity, their ethical standards, but a great deal of the causes of corruption exist in how the system of management and the system of governance and the system of control are set in the organization. In the case of integrity, most of these principles, or maybe all of them, would be there. Of course, you would have honesty and integrity, transparency would exist, accountability and responsibility is well defined and applied, equity and fairness and treating people using the same standard, the same criteria, economy and efficiency is sought. You would have decisions and practices based on professional, objective, and neutral criteria. Inclusiveness, you don't favor particular groups, you treat the various groups that you deal with on the same basis. Participation in decision making takes place, abiding by the rule of law and equal opportunity. These are, if the principles or the elements of good governance are applied, for sure, you would have integrity in that particular organization. So the prevalence of integrity is a reflection, as I said, of good governance system. Okay, let us examine the types of corruption. Okay, corruption is the misuse of authority or position to make private gains. Okay, if we talk about organizations, we talk about, for example, government, for example, or even business organizations. Corruption is not confined to government. It could also happen in business, it could happen in banks, it could happen in even civil society organizations. It's not confined particularly to a particular domain or segment of the institutions of the society. So according to the size of corruption, two terms here are used in the literature. Something, if corruption is little, if corruption takes the form of small bribes, for example, small favors, if it takes place at the lowest level in the organization, people, for example, who deal with the clients or the public, this is called petty corruption. Petty corruption. Petty means little, small. According to science, there is also grand corruption, big. huge. Grand corruption takes place at higher levels in the organization. It is pertinent to making big gains out of the practices or out of the decision-making powers that the person has. If, for example, the organization is offering a competitive bid for acquisition of certain procurements or elements or parts or equipment. If the person who is in charge would go to a particular supply company who is going to enter the bid and offer that company or the people in that company information that are not available to the rest of the bidders, of the other companies who are going to enter the bid. And on the agreement that he or she will influence the evaluation of the bids provided by the various companies to favor that particular company. Not on objective basis, not on professional basis, but rather to manipulate the evaluation process to give higher scores, higher evaluation to that particular company. He or she is doing that with the promise that if the bid would go to that company, he would receive, if the bid is 100 million pounds, for example, and he would receive $250,000 or $500,000 to be put in his account or to be given to him in whatever way. This is bribery. He or she is receiving that bribery to favor that particular company, to make it get the bid, to get higher scores, to win that competition or that bid, not on objective basis, but through manipulation, through intervention. This is grand corruption because the amount of money involved in the bribe, for example, the private gain or interest acquired by the corrupt individual is great. This is why it is called grand. So grand corruption takes place at higher levels in the organization, or when it involves a great sum of money or great sum of assets or major gains. And this is right. Continuing also the types of corruption. We can classify corruption not just on the basis of the size, petty and grand, but according to the area or domain or arena where it takes place. At the state level, the state state as an institution composed of the legislative branch, the lawmaking organ of the state, the judicial branch, the branch that consists of the court system, and the government, called the executive branch or administrative branch. Some types of corruption take place at the state level. A particular elite group takes control of the state, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, the government, and control the policies, control the programs, direct the resources managed by the state, supposedly for the interest of the society, to serve the elite who has control over the state organs. This is called state capture, corruption, state capture. Capture here means holding, controlling. A second type, according to the domain, in the political arena. Political corruption. If, for example, in elections, a particular party or a particular candidate who is rich, who has enough resources to bribe the citizens, to give benefits, to bribe the citizens to go and vote for that particular candidate or that particular party. If the political process is forged, if the results of the political competition of the various candidates for the parliament, for example, have been manipulated, forged, this is a type of political corruption. If we fill, for example, the sheet of giving our votes for the various candidates, have been counted in a wrong way. We added numbers that did not exist. We added people who did not go to give their votes. All of these are types of political corruption. Administrative corruption is the corruption that takes place in government. And corruption that takes place in government could be at lower level, we call it petty corruption. If it is at the middle level, we say middle level administrative corruption. If it is at the highest level, we call it grand administrative corruption. financial corruption. This is corruption that takes place in the financial sector, in banks, in financial institutions, in the stock market, in portfolio management companies, in all the various kinds of institutions that exist in the financial sector, to manipulate, for example, the market, to create false trends, to give indication that the market is rising. However, it is rising because of collusion of a number of people who have agreed to make gains if the prices of the shares, the level of prices in the stock market would rise. Then when the shares would rise, then they would sell. But they buy at low level prices and they sell at high level prices. And the difference here is not coming out of natural interaction between supply and demand in the stock market, but rather through collusion and through manipulation. This is a good example of financial corruption. It could take also place in banks. Banks offering loans to certain companies without enough collusion. Well, I'm sorry, without enough backing of assets to support the loans that would be given to these companies. In 2001, 2002, Egypt was suffering from this type of corruption, and it was discovered that banks have extended credit to companies and to firms and to business people whose financial situation would not be supported by the amount of credit that they have received from the banks. And that caused a serious problem. It caused a problem of shortage of liquidity. Some of the banks had financial problems regarding their inability to collect the loans that they have offered to the companies in that respect. Corruption could also be classified according to domain by the type of domains, by the type of sector, the type of sector. For example, we could talk about corruption in the educational sector. And Egypt is full of corruption in the educational sector at all levels. Pre-university education and higher education or university education as well. And it takes a variety of forms. variety of forms. So we could study, analyze, focus on the corruption that takes place in a particular sector like education, or in health, the health sector, public health institutions and private health institutions. In public health institutions, public hospitals, their, for example, procurement, their system of availing, opportunity for citizens, people, to get the health service, the system of providing care to treat particular types of diseases. Variety, again, variety of practices that may take place in the health sector to reflect corruption. In customs, الجمارك, the customs sector could be also characterized by corrupt practices, not applying the rules, the standards, receiving bribery, exchanging favors with those who are importing or exporting, whatever. In the area of housing also, especially public housing, maybe providing, I think I have a major example that exists all over Egypt in the area of housing. The violations of the housing and building regulations and standards. Making high-rise buildings in areas that do not allow beyond certain number of stories or levels in a particular random area, منطقة عشوائية. You may find buildings that are 20 stories, 20 levels, while the regulation, the limit, may be only 6 or 7. So how come the owners who build these by bribing the local engineering units? Egypt is full of corruption in the housing sector. In the area of procurement, the bids, the procurement, especially in public sector organizations, in public projects, and in taxes, the taxation department of the Ministry of Finance. Bribery could also take place. So, according to the type of sector, and the classification by sectors here is important, because corruption in a particular sector is affected by the type of opportunities to engage in corruption in that sector, by the type of chances, the loopholes, the gaps exist. Each sector has particular, unique characteristics and unique ways also of making private gains out of the institutional authority exercised in that particular domain. The literature and the organizations, the experts in the area of corruption and anti-corruption are currently focusing greatly on the sectorial domains, the type of corruption in a particular sector. So rather than talking about corruption in general, no, they talk and they analyze, they examine, they diagnose, and they set corrective anti-corruption strategies that would suit, that would fit the type of corruption in the particular. So in education, okay, let us see what are the gaps that allow corruption to take place and try to fill gaps in that particular sector. In health, examining the gaps, the loopholes in the health system, and try to fill these gaps and to prevent corruption and so on. So rather than to have an overall analysis of corruption, is to focus on the unique nature of each sector and to examine the types of corruption that exist there and the areas of gaps or risks in the system of that particular sector or domain. Okay, continuing on the types of corruption, and I have presented the criteria of size, differentiating between petty corruption and grand corruption, and the criteria of domain, and I elaborated on various types of corruption by domain: state capture, political, financial, administrative, and by the type of sector. The type of sector in health sector, in educational sector, in customs, taxation, and the rest. Types of corruption could also be examined according to the practices of corruption. The practices of corruption. The very common, the very well-known type is bribery. Bribery. The recipient of the service, for example, if the service is free, or if the service has a certain charge, if he or she wants to accelerate the service, if he or she wants to get more than what the regulation provides, if he wants to be ahead in the queue or the line of the people who are waiting to get the service, or for whatever reason, he may pay bribe to the service provider, the employee, the official, the person who is in charge of providing that service. The second type is trading in office. Using the office, using the power, using the position to exchange gains with others, to provide something extra to those others, and those recipients would also exchange the favor or pay extra or whatever. For example, in the housing sector in Egypt, some of the engineers in the local or district units, they are promised to get maybe units in the buildings that are violating the standards, violating the regulations, or receiving certain amount of money, or getting some kind of favor out of the contractor or the person or the entity that is building that housing or that building. Embezzlement. If you are a treasurer and you receive a lot of money on daily basis or on weekly basis, and there is loopholes in the system of responsibility and control over the cash received on daily or on weekly basis. This may motivate the treasurer to take some of such revenue, some of such money, taking certain assets that belong to the organization and getting it or moving it out or selling it and getting the revenue out of it. It's called, all of these are called embezzlement. Embezzlement is a function of weak control system, weak accountability system. The Arabic word for it is الاختلاس. الاختلاس. This is embezzlement. Conflict of interest. If you are in a position and in that position you should not deal with cases or situations that may involve benefiting others who are your relatives, who are your neighbors, who are people who are close to you. In many cases, the regulations may state or require that you should not be in a position, your decision in it would benefit these other people, benefit friends or relatives. If you are, for example, in the university, I have a son or a daughter in a certain year, I should not put the exam for that year, and I should not correct the exam. It is to prevent me from having conflict of interest. My interest here may go, I'm not talking about myself, may go to favoring my son or daughter. So to prevent this favoring is to keep me away, to prevent conflict of interest by making me away from being in the position of putting the exam or making the exam and correcting that exam. Judges, for example, in courts. If people who have cases are relatives to one of the judges in the court, according to conflict of interest regulation in courts, this judge should excuse himself, should declare that he cannot look into that case because he or she has a relative concerned in the case. Nepotism, cronyism, favoring friends, favoring relatives, favoring acquaintances. It's very common in our society and in the Arab culture in general. Favoritism is a major ill, a major form of corruption that exists within the society. Money laundering. Assets that have been acquired through illegal means rather than to keep them in liquid form, to put them, for example, in a piece of land, put them in a building, buying a building, putting them in establishing a factory, establishing a firm. It is to transfer the gain that is taking the form of liquid money to buy assets, to give them legitimacy. Because when you buy a piece of land, okay, it is registered, so money laundering, it is a process of transforming the gains that were acquired through corruption to something that takes a legal form, that is considered to be legitimate. This is why it's called laundering. Laundering, meaning washing the dirt of corruption, the dirt of stealing, the dirt of acquiring the assets through the liquid assets through illegal or corrupt means. Okay. One of the major indicators of corruption at the world level, at the international level, is published by an international organization called Transparency International. Transparency International. Transparency International publishes, it is an organization based in Berlin, but it has chapters and branches in many countries in the world. One of the key publications that they have on yearly basis is something called the Corruption Perception Index. The Corruption Perception Index is a measure of how corruption is spread, exists, is prevalent in the particular country that is under focus. The index covers now 180 countries in the world. Meaning what? Meaning almost all countries in the world are subjected to that index or that evaluation. The index is set through, as I said, assessment of how corruption is prevalent in a particular country, and the assessment is made by groups of experts who examine the practices, the types of corruption, grand and petty and various types of corruption, to come up with a score from 0 to 100. From 0 to 100. Of course, the lower the score, the more prevalent corruption is in the country. The higher the score, the more integrity and the more transparency and the less corruption in the country that has obtained this high score. In 2019, I got this out of the Corruption Perception Index. The 5 top countries in the world that are characterized by the lowest level of corruption or the highest level of integrity. The highest level of integrity are: number 1, Denmark. And Denmark got 88 out of 100. The second country is New Zealand, and it got 78 out of 100. There are 4 countries that got the same score. So they have the same rank, 3rd, and the score was 85. And these countries are Finland, Sweden, Singapore, Switzerland. Norway got a score of 84 with a rank of 7. Netherlands got a score of 82 with a rank of 8. We'll notice here that most of the countries, with the exception of Singapore, belong to Northern Europe. Northern Europe. Okay. The other table that I constructed represent the score and the rank of the Arab countries. Arab countries. United Arab Emirates got a score of 70 with a rank, international rank, with an international rank 23. Qatar 62, the score, the rank is 33. Oman, a score of 52 with a rank of 53. The score, as I said, out of 100, and the rank is out of 180 countries. 180 countries. Jordan got a score of 49 with a rank of 58. Kingdom of Saudi Arabia 49, same rank, 58. Morocco, score of 43, a rank of 73. Tunisia 43 with a rank of 73. Kuwait, score of 41 with a rank of 78. Bahrain, score of 36 out of 100, okay? With a rank of 99. And Egypt got a score of 35 out of 100. 35 out of 100, and a rank of 105 out of 180 countries. Lebanon got a score of 28 and a rank of 183. Iraq, a score of 28, a rank of 138. Libya, a score of 17 out of 100, with a rank of 170 out of 180. Very, very low in the ranks. Sudan, score of 16 with a rank of 172, and Yemen, score of 16 with a rank of 172. Meaning what? Meaning that maybe the top 3 Arab countries in integrity and lack of corruption are United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Oman. And the lowest in integrity, and meaning that they suffer greatly of corruption, are Yemen, this is at the bottom, Sudan, and Libya. One observation, one remark I need to make regarding the Corruption Perception Index of Transparency International. This index doesn't measure doesn't reflect state capture corruption, doesn't reflect political corruption, doesn't reflect the macro type of corruption, doesn't reflect corruption that takes place in the private sector, nor in the civil society sector. It mainly focuses on corruption in government administration and focusing on middle-level corruption, petty corruption, and grand corruption. But corruption that characterizes the society as a whole and the state organs as a whole, political capture and state capture, corruption perception index does not reflect. This is my evaluation, critique of that particular measure. Okay, let's examine now the impact, the consequences of various types of corruption, and to see what are the consequences of them on conditions of the society and economic development and economic results and consequences. And let's examine state capture and grand corruption. State capture and grand corruption. Just to remind you, state capture refers to controlling the state organs and directing policies of the state to serve a particular political or economic group or elite. Okay? So, what would be the economic consequences or the economic impact of that particular type, including also grand corruption, not just state capture, but also grand corruption that takes place in the executive branch or the government branch. This is part of a series of studies that I have made over the last maybe 7 or 8 years on the subject matter of corruption. One major consequence of state capture and grand corruption is directing and distorting development programs and public policies, not to serve the whole of the society, not to serve all segments of the society, but to serve the elites who are controlling the state organs, serving the interests of the particular political elite or oligarchy that is in power, draining of and wasting national wealth. If you are controlling the whole state, so the wealth that the country possesses is directed to the interest or to serve the interest of the political controlling elite. Protecting and promoting economic concentration, monopolies. And oftentimes, the elite that control the state, they have also their business in the economy. And their business, they operate in sectors characterized by economic concentration of monopolies. Okay? You don't propose. Do not promote economic competition. Economic competition. The existence of these types of corruption increase the non-productive and the rent-seeking activities. The activities that do not add value. The activities of intermediary, entities or activities in the economy, and activities of corruption and money laundering and making assets and wealth out of illegal or through corrupt practices. Existence of these types of corruption, of course, deter foreign investment, deter foreign capital from coming to that particular country, because foreign investment like to have an environment based on equal opportunity, environment based on transparency, so that they don't have to pay bribes, they don't have to pay extra to get licenses or to get approvals or to enter the market or to make commercial or economic transactions in that particular country. Serving the elites and creating marginalized segments. Economic policies, economic programs serve certain groups, but do not serve the total of the society. And due to that, marginalized segments and groups increase. Poverty increase. People with low income, people with shanty housing, people with very limited ownership of assets. So the majority will be this. And wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few, the elites. Delaying the development of small and medium enterprises. If we examine the countries that are characterized by state capture and grand corruption, we would find that the policies of the system favor large corporations, large businessmen, and the laws, the policies, the regulations, the favors, and what the government and the state do it is to serve the interest of the ruling oligarchy or the political and economic elite. The small enterprises, the medium-sized enterprises, the micro-enterprises are not given the support, are not given the care, are not given what they need to grow and to flourish in this kind of economy or this kind of environment. Okay, economic impact of administrative corruption. Corruption that take place in the government, in the executive branch. What are the economic impacts of this type of corruption? Increasing transaction costs for business. Meaning what? If you want to get a license to a building that you want to have, the company wants to establish a factory, wants to import equipment, machineries, want to engage in, it has to be paid bribes. So paying the bribes, paying extra, the cost of corruption here, the cost of corruption here make or create a burden for business. It is called transaction cost, the cost of making transactions in the market. It is not made based on integrity, equal opportunity, objectivity, efficiency, but rather based on the private gain that the provider of the service, the government service, if, for example, the employee or the manager or the official has the authority to approve a license to establish a factory, he or she would create all kinds of obstacles that represent signals that he or she needs to be paid to remove these obstacles and to facilitate the process. So the transactions that the business engage in are full of extra costs, extra payments, extra burdens in this regard. And by the way, I'm gonna mention it later. Wasting a significant percentage of public budget and resources, because these resources would not be fully geared to serve the people who need these services in the society, but rather part of it would be embezzled, part of it would be wasted, part of it would be directed to serve limited private interest. Deteriorated public services. Of course, if services are provided only if you pay a bribe, then this would mean that these services are not offered to everybody. would not be offered with ease, would not be offered with less burden. It would mean deterioration of public services, and the services that could be obtained quickly, efficiently, swiftly, it is only for those who can pay the bribes, who can pay the corruption requested by the public officials. Burdening the common people. Of course, when you have corruption in government, the poor people carry the burden because their income, their capability to pay the bribe is low, even though they need that service much more than the high income groups or the elite groups in the society. And it also burdens more the small and medium enterprises. And in a study that was conducted in the Faculty of Commerce and Business Administration by a researcher called Leila Delawar, in a master's thesis, she proved that the burden of corruption, in Egypt is greater for small and medium enterprises than for large enterprises. Large enterprises because they have the means, they have the assets, they have the capabilities, and they have the connection as well. Corruption doesn't constitute much burden for them. While the very small businesses, of course, if they are required to pay a bribe, this would be a major burden compared to their capability, compared to the amount or the value of assets that they have, and compared to their size. It results also in inefficient public sector. If corruption is prevalent in the government, then we cannot call this government efficient in providing public services. Corruption in government also causes distortion in the implementation of public plans and programs. Rather than directing these programs to serve the needy people, the people who are targeted, it ends up going to a few or going to the unintended groups who are able to get the services of these programs if they pay the bribes or if they engage in corrupting the public officials. The impact of petty corruption on economic development is great. Corruption that exists at the lower levels in the government. Corruption that takes place in the practices of the lower level employees, the lower level positions. It results in inefficient government administration. It also burdens the poor and the small and medium enterprises. It results in poor public services as well, and it results in inefficient implementation of government programs and in bad investment environment. Corrupt administration, and if petty corruption is prevalent, is widespread, it would deter investors to come to the country because of the burden, because of the extra cost that corruption entails. Okay? Economic impact of financial corruption. Corruption in the financial sector, the stock market, the banks, the various financial institutions. Corruption in the financial institutions, okay, strip these institutions from their real roles, their effective role in the economy and in facilitating the flow of capital and the flow of funds among sectors. In corruption in the stock market also would have major consequences, because it would mean that the stock market doesn't represent the real forces of supply and demand on the stock. If it is manipulated by certain groups, if it is a result of collusion among particular groups in the market. Corruption in the corporate sector also, like what happened in 2008 in the United States and in other parts of the world, engaging in practices that hide illegal, manipulative actions and practices on the part of executives, making collusions with the auditing firms, engaging in activities that result in self-benefiting rather than benefiting the corporations that these executives are directing. There are incidents and indicators that financial crisis that may hit the economy is a result of poor governance in the financial sector, or the existence of corruption and lack of transparency in the financial sector. Okay. I'm gonna just two last transparencies. We can classify the strategies for combating corruption, for fighting corruption, for controlling corruption. We can have direct strategies through prevention. How do we prevent corruption? By strengthening governance and integrity, as well as closing the institutional gaps and loopholes in the governance framework, on the governance structure. So prevention is one strategy. Another strategy is, after corruption has taken place, to detect, to expose, and to punish those who have engaged in it. Of course, prevention and the second strategy, detection and exposure and punishment, should complement one another. You should not rely only on detecting and punishing after corruption has taken place, but it is better to strengthen the institutional framework and the governance framework and the integrity framework to make it difficult to engage in corrupt practices and to prevent such practices from happening. There are indirect strategies to combat corruption that we can call institutional and governance reform. Total reforming and reformulating the governance and the institutional, for example, to enhance transparency, to enhance integrity, to prevent conflict of interest, to pay well for employees so that they don't go into receiving bribes to complement their wages, to find how to strengthen the institutional and governance framework and how to reform it for not just for preventing corruption, but for better performance, better effectiveness, better efficiency. Two major strategies according to domains. We have either an overall strategy, anti-corruption strategy that cuts across various sectors and institutions, okay? Or we can rely on strategies that focus on particular sectors, depending on the nature of corruption in each sector. So we could have anti-corruption directed to the health sector. We could have another set of measures directed at the customs and taxes sectors, education sector, housing, public projects, and so on and so forth. Let me finish by this transparency, which is suggesting that rather than focusing on detecting and punishing corruption, to strengthen and to enhance integrity. So I would call this integrity strengthening strategies. How is this done? What are the key components of such an approach? First, building and strengthening a good governance system at all levels and in all domains. Governance that pertain to the state institutions, organs, and structure. Governance that pertain to government administration and government system and practice. Governance that good governance system apply to sectors in the economy to prevent monopolies and to prevent economic concentration. Governance in the financial sector and institution, and so on and so forth. Building an integrity-based culture, and this is the most perhaps difficult and a daunting challenge, is how to create a value system, a set of beliefs, a set of ethical standards in the minds of people, in what people have in their minds and in their practice. This is very, very important. And unfortunately, we lack this. We lack in Egypt a culture that is based on integrity. As a matter of fact, our societal culture has become acquainted and tolerant of corruption. Tolerant, rather than resenting corruption, it has become tolerant, and integrity has been weakened greatly in our value system and in the set of beliefs and traditions constituting the societal culture. Third, emphasizing integrity in the educational system. This is so important. The education system plays a major role in shaping the mindset, in shaping the value system, in shaping the standards, ethical, standards that people have. If the education system is corrupt, don't expect that people who will graduate from that system to hold or to act according to ethical or integrity standards. So it is important to inject and reform the education system to focus on not just the transfer of knowledge, but to focus on the values, the ethics, the integrity, the transparency, equal opportunity, honesty. Okay? Number 4, emphasizing integrity and good governance in political, economic, and state organs and domains. State institutions, political system and institutions, and economic system, including the various sectors in the economy, to build and to inject and to regulate, strongly regulate, the practices that take place to make sure that they adhere to high integrity and high ethical standards. Last but not least, relying on leaders who represent role models of integrity and ethical standards, and who apply integrity principles in the institutions that they lead or manage or direct. Leaders at all levels and in all domains play a major role because they are the examples that are followed by others. They are the role models who influence the practice of others. So it is important to select the leaders who have high integrity, to choose the leaders at all levels and in all domains who are committed to high ethical standards, and to keep them accountable also, to make them responsible for the ethical aspects of the decisions and the practices they have. Thank you.